All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live here with Switching the Coverage. Welcome to the best part of your Tuesday night. And if you're listening on iTunes or SoundCloud, what will hopefully be the best part of your Wednesday morning. Got a lot of cool things coming you guys' way, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So, Rod, you going to cop those Lonzo ones?
Man, you know, I was thinking about maybe like heading over like the Marshalls or TJ Maxx or something like that. And, but, you know, nah, I ain't going to do that.
So, on our Twitter, at Switch Coverage, our social media team actually put up a really cool meme of Lonzo holding his shoe, and it had a Marshall's price tag on there, right?
Yep.
And then, so what are they selling them for now? Like $500?
Yeah, we had it marked down from $66 to $23.
$29. It was $29.99.
$29. That's what it was.
$29.99 for the Lonzo ones. I honestly, I don't even know what they're calling them. So I'm just gonna call them the Lonzo ones.
They were called the Zo 2 or whatever it was. I mean, this is like his Twitter handle. But I mean, in other news, British Knights are making the comeback too, I guess.
I really honestly don't understand the logic behind what he and his father were trying to do, because I'm gonna give you a little bit of business insight here. So if you're looking at like a LeBron or a Steph Curry, even a Kyrie, off of a shoe deal, you could be bringing in $20 to $30 million a year without having to do anything besides show up and say, yes, I like that design. They have to look at logistics, design, putting the actual shoe together, everything that goes into building a product, as well as the marketing, you know, everything that goes into the building and selling of a product, as well as setting the price points and so forth. So how much of a profit are you really going to make would be my question towards him and hashtag LeVar Ball.
Go ahead.
Well, I did some research on Mr. LeVar Ball.
Oh, here come the stats.
And,
Okay.
First of all, they sold $157,000 on their first day in sales. But, you know, what I thought was interesting, I was looking at a couple business insiders, and here's something that they did say. They said, you know, in a rookie endorsement deal, the player receives a flat contractual fee for wearing the brand. I mean, Ben Simmons, the number one pick this past year, has a 5-year, $20 million Nike deal. Okay, so with his deal, he doesn't get any share of the profits. Okay, but a analyst said, you know, if he actually does perform, and he, you know, his rookie year maybe gets in a good market, maybe goes to the L.A. Lakers. I know you're hoping that Ball.
At this point, I want him to stay far away from my Lakers. Stay far away.
But if he does, they said, you know, this could be quite a gamble, but then he would actually be sharing the profits in this. So if he ends up being a big rookie, and that's a big gamble in a big market, they said that this could change the landscape of how rookie deals are done in the future.
Well, I mean, I know that we're gambling on one side being idiocy and on the other side being genius, but there's just something to what Michael Jordan and the LeBron James and all these guys of the world have done, and they have legitimately built a brand based off of what they did on the court, and I think that's where he's got in trouble there, because yes, he is a very, very good player. But he has not proven anything in the NBA. In fact, he got handled in the NCAA tournament.
They should have called those shoes the De'Aaron Fox's ones.
I can't guard De'Aaron Fox ones.
Was that the Elite Eight that they got put out?
Yeah, I was at that game.
Sweet 16.
The Sweet 16 ones.
Kentucky guy, but you know he is still. You know, a lot of people say, well, his draft stock is falling, and that's not actually true. I mean, he's still a top 5 pick. But here's something interesting. This is a different twist, because I know the narrative has been, you know, that LeVar Ball is destroying his son's career, etc. But, you know, here's the thing. LeVar Ball has been on First Take. He's actually been on TV with Barkley. And ESPN business reporter Dan Ravel said, you can say all you want about it, about how people say stop talking about LeVar Ball. He needs to go away. But the people don't want to stop hearing about him. They secretly love him, and he's an incredible speaker. He's not a dumb man. And as far as media icons go, LeVar Ball is smart in what he's doing. I mean, who is the highest paid analyst for ESPN?
The highest paid one is Stephen A. Smith.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and he's loud, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Skip Bayless, loud. He has figured out that you can be the loudest in the room and get attention, and he's actually got 2 younger sons that are in high school, and the youngest is supposed to be the best. So I'm not defending LeVar Ball, and I'm not calling him a genius by any means, but I am trying to present a different side than what the media has been talking about so far.
Hold on, because a lot of people have said that, and I'm just going to say that is inherently false, and here's why. He's not proven anything. He got beat in the Sweet 16. You have to have a marketable product before you can go and start flapping your gums. So you're a big wrestling fan, right?
I am, yes.
So you have the heel and the face.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, you have to have a good guy and a bad guy in wrestling. You don't want to be the bad guy going into the league. Number one, you're going to have every player in the league coming at you, coming for your throat. And none of the teams are going to want this guy when he comes with the built-in distraction of his father.
So you're predicting he will not be a top 5 pick?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the talent pool and the way the NBA draft is set up with one-and-dones and so forth, I would not be surprised if he still is a one-and-done pick. But if he falls, a top 5 pick, but if he falls outside the top 10, I still wouldn't be surprised at that either, just because when you look, again, at everything that's attached to that draft pick, GMs are going to recognize that. Go ahead, Rod.
And the thing about it, too, is when you talk about a Stephen A. Smith, or you even talk about a Skip Bayless, and yes, they're the loudest voices in the room, but there's still a foundation and some substance that has been built, and the loudest voice is more of an extension of what they already have as a foundation. There's no foundation to LeVar Ball. He's just a loud dude that's got a really talented kid right now that he is banking everything on.
And I'm not, first of all, for our audience here, I'm not defending his actions. In fact, if this would not be how I would. This is not how I'm going to handle Gabby, as her agent. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. But I am saying what they're doing is they're trying to take a risk that he does get with a big market. I think they're banking on the Lakers, hopefully, for them. And if he has a big rookie career, what they're banking on is if he is a star quickly, that he will actually on the back end make more money because he'll actually share in the profits of his own shoe as opposed to having a fixed contract with White Nike.
Okay, but again, how much of that profit are you going to see? $30 million for showing up and saying, yes, I like that design, or thousands. Be real, thousands of dollars, because you still have to pay for everything that goes into making the product.
He's already proven he's been bluster for a couple of things. Number one, he talks so much trash about how much better his son was in Kentucky, and Kentucky can't run with my boy and everything else. They got boat raced in that game, all right? So then after the game, he makes a comment, 2 days later, that they had too many white boys to be able to run, and that's why they couldn't win a national title. I mean, they had the 3 starters that were just slow-footed, and then, of course, with his son that's in high school, he talked about the fact that his high school coach had an issue with him, and that hurt them in terms of how well they did in the high school playoffs. So there's always an excuse or an alternative narrative every time he comes up short. So he's proven himself to be somebody that's always looking at taking the back door out after things don't work out.
Right now. So we're looking at Lonzo Ball, LeVar Ball, the big baller brand. So branding. We're looking at branding, right?
Yes.
So now if we spin this back to actual on-the-court action, Rod, tell us what happened last week with Boston and the Washington Wizards.
Man, so Kelly Olynyk, who is
a thug.
Yes, a total power forward for Boston. And then, of course, Kelly Oubre is a small forward or wing for Washington. Olynyk sets a screen that you would typically see if any of you guys are familiar with Above the Rim. On Birdie's team, you would have saw this type of pick where he just flat out just took his arm and just absolutely just clocked him in the chest. So Olynyk's mad about it. He runs all the way down, and he just totally clocks him in the chest. But here's what I want to say about this. I understand that we have to suspend people because of reactions, and you have to handle those maturely. But I, for one, do not think the NBA is doing enough to punish people who are repeat offenders of instigating.
Now, see, here's the thing that what you said that came to mind for me, and I want to tie this back to a bigger picture, but one thing I have to focus on is you always tell kids when you coach kids, especially in something like football, it's not the action that draws the penalty, the flag, or the whistle. It's the reaction.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to tie this back to something that's going to make all three of us hurt a little bit. But in the national title game with Alabama and Clemson on the last drive, Deron Payne gets pushed. He pushes the Clemson player back. Clemson player falls down.
Yep.
Who gets flagged?
He gets a
The guy
15-yard
that
penalty,
retaliated. Now, but again, here's the thing. So Kelly Olynyk, he's seen in a very specific kind of light. He's just seen as a guy that's going to go out there. He's going to get about 4 fouls a game. He's going to get 2 points. His stat line that game was actually straight ones: 1 point, one rebound, 1 assist, and 1 foul.
He is a poor man's Bill Laimbeer. But see, here's the thing about it. I understand certain things about one-offs. This guy has a track record. 2 years ago, he literally pulled Kevin Love's arm out of the socket.
Yes. Yeah. Now
he could have potentially cost Cleveland a title.
Let me ask you. You have 2 children. Would you want Gabby, who you will be her agent, Mr. 3.0? Would
Yes,
you
I
want
will.
Gabby to play like Kelly Olynyk?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. All right. So, Mr. 3.0, you did some research for us this weekend, and in the past, Charles Barkley, years ago in the early 90s, he had a commercial. So tell us a little bit about what you found with that commercial.
Well, I actually went back and listened to it, and basically he said, paraphrasing here, he said that just because I can dunk a basketball doesn't make me a role model. He basically just came out and said that, I play basketball, but it's not my responsibility to be a role model to kids. It's basically what the commercial that he did, I believe, back in 1993 or 94.
I think it was 93.
Yeah, so it's been a long time since he made that comment.
Now, here's the bigger picture that we are looking at today. So we gave you the example of Lonzo and LeVar, of the 2 Kellys, Olynyk and Oubre Jr., and then now Charles Barkley specifically said, I am not here to raise your child. That was actually a line in the commercial. Is I'm not here to raise your child. I'm not. His exact words. I'm not a role model. I've cleaned up the language a little bit just for FCC purposes. So what we're looking at: athletes, entertainers, public figures, and so forth. Are they meant to be role models, or are they here purely for our entertainment? Of course, as we love to do, we're going to take this across all different canvases, several different campuses. How many other C words do I got here? So we're not just going to look at athletes. We're going to look at athletes, entertainers, public figures, and obviously we are in a world that we have so much more access to these people now. When you're looking at social media, as we have discussed on several of our live broadcasts, but is it true that they are role models? And if it is true that they are role models, should we allow it to be so? So that's what we're going to be looking at this week. So Mr. Rod, of course, is going to be taking you guys to commercial. I'm going to let you pick. Which commercial are you going to give them this week? You going to give them the new one or you going to give them the old one? I'm going to let you pick.
Which,
give them the logistics commercial. Top of the dome.
The top of the dome.
Top of the head.
Very good.
Hey,
3.0. Very good.
he learned.
All right, so guys, we got a new commercial coming to you guys this week. We are brought to you every week live by Logistics Multimedia, and Mr. Rod is going to give you a little bit of info about Logistics Multimedia coming to you right now.
Logistics Multimedia. Anytime you need videography done, photography done, these guys are the ones that do it. They are bringing you this show, and they have done a phenomenal job with it. They will travel anywhere, meet with you, whether it's for modeling, whether it's for weddings, whether it's for podcasts like this. Logistics Multimedia is the choice.
Thank you very much, sir, Mr. Rod. All right, we are back to our second segment here. Now, I want to take a bit of a serious spin here, and we're going to take you guys to last summer at the ESPYs. You had LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, and Chris Paul, which, by the way, I think those 4 are going to be -1 when they have the husband and wives trips this summer. Shout out to I don't really want to ring Carmelo, but
in more ways than one.
Yeah, more ways than one. How do you cheat on Lala? How do you cheat on Lala? Can you tell me how? Like mentally, physically, how do you do it?
I mean, it's Melo.
How did Tiger cheat?
Excellent point. 3.0. Dumbfounded. Elin, his ex-wife, actually has a twin. She has a twin sister. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. All right. So last year at the ESPYs, those 4 gentlemen that I mentioned, LeBron, D. Wade, Carmelo, and Chris Paul, they actually, in pieces, gave a very impassioned speech, pleading with police officers to stop ending the lives, and I quote, of black and brown people. He said the endless killing has to stop. I specifically remember some of Dwayne Wade's exact words. The endless killing has to stop. The violence has to stop. And I watch the ESPYs usually in parts every year, but I paid very close attention to that part because to me it was very brave for those four to go up on stage and take the stance that they did. I mean, last summer you had a lot with the Black Lives Matter movement, very public, very much so on the news, week in and week out with the demonstrations that were going on. And this speech by these four took place after police officer shootings in Louisiana, and I believe it was Minnesota.
Yes,
it was Minnesota. Mm-hmm.
I do know one of the gentlemen's name was Austin Sterling, and the other gentleman's name is just slipping my mind at the moment. But that is what
Philando Castile.
Thank you, Philando Castile. Perfect. So Austin Sterling and Philando Castile was a couple of weeks before they gave this impassioned speech. Now it just got me to thinking. I was like, man, the backlash on this is going to be huge. Like I couldn't help but think that because I'm going to say people are going to say, stick to sports. You're basketball players. Why are you giving this speech? But as a black male, to me, it was empowering to see these gentlemen who know they have a public voice, who know that they're public figures, to stand up there and to voice not just their thoughts but their concerns.
And it was and for them to be able to do that, and they realized and they knew this was a risk, but it was a risk that they were willing to take because so many people take that Russell Wilson approach to just as I would use a $20 word from shout out to Miss Frucy, the milquetoast approach to things where they just don't want to, they won't want to say anything either way. Just play it close to the vest. These guys said, you know what? It doesn't matter if people are mad about this. I'm going to use this platform to shout what I believe. And they shouted out what they believed. And, in fact, most people, even the people who disagreed with them on that, were still walked away and they were like, you know what? I appreciate and admire the fact that these guys aren't just up here looking at this as, oh, I just play basketball, but I'm using this platform to positively affect change.
Mr. 3.0.
Well, sports has athletes have been able to take their platform in sports for a very long time and use that as an opportunity to speak out. I mean, we can go back to Muhammad Ali and we can go back to other examples. I for one, I didn't actually see it live, but I for one was one that, hey, I applauded them for speaking out. And I going back a little bit to the Charles Barkley commercial, Karl Malone, I think, said it, very well. He said in a column in Sports Illustrated back then, but I think it ties to what we're talking about here. He said, Charles, I don't think it's your decision to make whether we're to choose to be role models. We're chosen. Our only choice is, are we good or are we a bad role model? That's what he said there. And I applaud people that are willing to take a stand and use a platform for good. And that right there, that was done by the collection of players on the ESPYs. That was a good and noble stance to take.
Oh, absolutely. And the adage has always been, to whom much is given, much is required. So I think that's one of the things that we have to think about as we continue on within this segment. And there's been people not just in the athletic arena, but there's just so many people in movies, in pop culture, and business and other arenas who, just the same way oftentimes, and we've had the podcast about Box Without Labels, where it's like, stick to whatever it is you do. I think one of the most active people from a community advancement standpoint has been Russell Simmons over the years.
Oh, that's a fantastic example.
Russell Simmons he is actively involved right now in over 34 charities. Obviously we know that he started Def Jam, music production. That was the lane that launched him, so to speak. But you got to look at what he's done. He has the Rush Philanthropy Arts Foundation. And what that's doing is it's helping disadvantaged youth have the opportunity to practice and apply art. Because we'll look at one of the things, and I know with my wife being a teacher for years in inner city schools, it's just math and science there because, we so behind and everything else. They don't get a chance to see anything in arts and all of the things that come with that give them a taste of a world outside of just where they are, and they'll never get a chance to be exposed to that. He's been a champion for that. He's had Feeding America, Champions for Children. Speaking of champions, the ACE programs for the homeless. So he has always been about elevating people with the platform that he has. Now, obviously, I
hold your thought, because I'm looking at our comments here, and I knew this would happen eventually. So, question says, FBI Director James Comey fired today. Thoughts from the Switching the Coverage crew? Looking right in the camera, we're not touching politics.
No.
We're not touching politics.
We certainly are willing to talk about how society is impacted by culture, by entertainment, by sports, etc. But politics is something that is a very divisive issue, and it's really hard to take a stand. So we do try to steer away from politics.
But here's why. One of the things we're looking to do, I'm gonna give him a sip of the Kool-Aid. One of the things we're looking to do, obviously, besides this, I think somebody coined us as like a sports variety show.
Correct.
Because we're more than just sports. We're sports, culture, and entertainment. One of the things we're looking to do with STC Media is expand so that we do have a political arena, so that people on both sides, left or right, or all sides, left, right, in the middle, have a voice. Because I think it's fair. You can discuss politics if people that are from the left, the right, and the middle can sit down and have that conversation. And I think the three of us actually kind of exemplify that. So eventually, yes, we'll be able to answer those kind of questions. We will have on-air personalities to answer those kind of questions. But right here, we ain't touching it. We ain't touching it.
One thing I wanted to go a little bit back.
Neither is Comey, but
I want to go a little bit backtrack just a little bit, and then I want to tie that into a couple people that have made an impact in the world. But Damian Lillard, I really enjoyed reading about him.
Oh, yeah, this was fantastic.
He said, I think I'm a role model. I see it as a responsibility. And I thought this was a very interesting point as we look at the Charles Barkley thing from back in '93 and where we are today. He said, when I was growing up, all I knew about Jordan was the Jumpman sign, the shoes, and that he was the best player. I didn't know what type of person Michael Jordan was or what he thought about anything. I just saw him playing in games, and that was it. And I think now we have Twitter, Instagram, and Vine, and all these things, all these ways for people to see us and follow us in everything that we do. And they actually, and so he recognizes that, and so that the athlete is in a different spot, and even entertainers and celebrities are in a different spot today than they were back in even as the 1990s and early 2000s.
Speaking of celebrities, 3.0, we've got Johnny in the chat room who says, "Are you going to give your props to Russell Simmons because he created the rush card that's helped you to earn those black points?"
Shout out to our social media director there. Now, here's the thing, guys. You said Damian Lillard. I wanted to give him a shout out because he got the Blazers team together and wanted them to find a way to use their playoff bonuses to help pay the team staffers. Not the coaches, but the staffers, like the people that you never see passing out towels and so forth, get the locker rooms ready, which I thought that was very cool. Again, we're going to dissect this in moments here, but you talk about people doing things that I would want, if I had a child, that I would want my child looking up to. That is something definitely right there.
Yes, absolutely.
Another thing he did is, if the ESPYs, they asked him what he most anticipating the most about the ESPYs, and he said, walking the red carpet with a Special Olympics athlete. And it really, everybody, the Special Olympics, Twitter page blew up, etc. And anyway, I just really appreciated his perspective and what he had to say. But I really thought it was interesting how social media has actually put this to the forefront, because we get to see, beyond the screen or beyond the court, beyond the field in a way that we've never seen.
There's no doubt. And believe what you want to believe. I feel like we're all called to certain things, and we're all gifted in certain ways. And as an athlete, as an entertainer, as a public figure in general, typically to get to a level where millions of people have their eyes on you, that is your genius, or that is your gift. And I am a firm believer that your gift is supposed to be utilized as a platform that for you to be able to in some way change the world. That's why you were gifted in the way that you were. You're gifted that way to inspire people to believe things that they may not have believed before, to do things they may not have thought they were able to do before. And your personal story and background and testimony plays into that just as well as your gift. So I fully believe that there is a responsibility. They're not, I'm not saying you're supposed to raise somebody's kids.
I thought you were going to quote Spider-Man.
Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which Spider-Man?
yeah.
No.
But now, so to look at someone specifically in the sports arena that definitely, as he got older and closer to his death, a lot of what he was seen as and the way he was viewed historically started to change. Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
Because he was vilified for much of his career and early adult life for the stances that he took.
Right.
I'm not, I got to be careful with my wording here, but ain't no Viet Cong ever called me, and that's why he refused to agree that he was drafted into the war. And even when he fought Joe Frazier, so we're talking about branding, right, and people being role models. Muhammad Ali was very good at crafting a very specific story. He specifically said that Joe Frazier was an Uncle Tom. Joe, you and Uncle Tom, besides calling him a gorilla and saying he was ugly. But for people that attended Ali Frazier won, and when the number one, they fought 3 times. But for that specific fight, it was like watching the guy who stood up for all the things we believe in, willing to fight against the system, and the guy who was just going to lay down and not say anything. Ali versus, Ali being the guy willing to stand up and fight for the things we believe in. So when Joe Frazier dusted him off with that left hook and knocked him down, he didn't knock him out, but when he knocked him down, I remember reading by Howard Cosell that there was just a very audible, the way he said it was so weird to me, but now I get it, an audible silence that just swept across the arena because the people's champ was down on the ground, and they wasn't sure if he was going to get up. So Mr. 3.0, I'm tying that back to what you said, in that whether they want to be public figures, role models or not, they are.
There is no question that they are. And some other point that I thought was really interesting is it was actually a professor at Northwestern in Chicago. He said, it's funny how big shots accept all the trappings of modeldom, but then they renounce their broader responsibility to society once they actually become famous. So his point was, when they're trying to become the star, they do fit in that mold of where to where they can become that model. But then once they become famous, a lot of times they want to renounce the fact that, hey, I'm a role model. And I thought that was an interesting perspective that he made.
Because typically the first appeal society has to somebody that becomes a public figure or becomes very famous is the attraction to their organic nature, whatever that may be.
Yes, absolutely. And, you look at someone like LeBron James as an example. So came from a single-parent home. They didn't have a whole lot. And people were rooting for this kid to come in. But and really, there's several layers to this because people, I think, for a long time, have been and will be looking for the next Michael Jordan, right?
Right.
But in a lot of ways, that's unfair because it was more than what Michael did on the court. He transcended the game and made the NBA a worldwide brand. Now, I want to compare this to other sports leagues because now you have the Jordan brand, right? So everybody knows the Jumpman symbol. The NFL does not allow their players to transcend the shield. Stephen A. Smith said it. We were talking about Tom Brady.
That's a very, very good point.
Well, he was talking about Tom Brady last year, and the reason, that he believed that suspension was going to get upheld is that he said nobody is bigger than the shield. Nobody is bigger than the shield. And if you think about it, look all the way down to the rules that they apply now. Like Antonio Brown last year when he got in the end zone and started twerking. Yeah. See, his problem was he popped 3 times. You get 2 pops.
You get 2 pops.
2 pops. That's it. But see, the thing is that when it comes to the NFL, they are very big on the brand of the shield. Not even down to the team level, but the shield, NFL.
Yes.
Not about the players and so much, and that's why they were always so hard on a guy like a Chad Ochocinco / Johnson. Is they were telling him, you will never be bigger than us. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to look at is that certain arenas, like your wrestlings, like basketball, for example, because basketball is a star-driven league, whereas the NFL is all about the shield itself.
Correct. Speaking of wrestling, I would say, and I know you're the expert here, 3.0, Hulk Hogan really is the first one that truly, would you say, transformed wrestling into a worldwide brand?
Right? There's no question. January 23rd, 1984, to be exact.
Wow.
When he beat the Iron Sheik in Madison Square Garden. But you are correct.
The birth of Hulkamania.
Wrestling was a very territorial sport, or a form of entertainment at that time. If you were from like Missouri, you knew Harley Race. If you were from the Atlantic, area, you knew Ric Flair, for example, or my hometown of Memphis, you knew Jerry Lawler. But with Vince McMahon steering the ship, Hulk Hogan was the very first to go into Sports Illustrated. And wrestling has, if you look through the peaks and the valleys of wrestling, it has been defined by the stars. Hulk Hogan, and then he started fading a little bit, and then he changed his character in NWO.
Hollywood Hogan.
And then you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, and you had The Rock / Dwayne Johnson. And it's been a very star-driven, arena. And just like the NBA, David Stern has been on record to say, for him to feel like the NBA needed to go bigger, he realized that, hey, we need to make it about our stars.
Yes.
And he did that.
NFL didn't have to do that.
And the NFL didn't have to, but David Stern felt like they had to. And, Larry Bird and Magic kind of got it started. And then, the rocket launch, if you will, came with Michael Jordan.
And then you look at the MLB. You and I were talking about this. This was months ago, but the MLB is at a point now. Of course, you have your Babe Ruth, your Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle. I just named 3 Yankees. I'm gonna vomit. But you have your guys historically, your Ted Williams and so forth, Ken Griffey Jr. If you want a modern day example, but it took them years of building their on-the-field brand. And then you think about a Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth didn't become like the Babe Ruth until, you're talking about the 50s and 60s.
Yes.
And he stopped playing like late 20s, early 30s. So what I'm looking at here is that the NBA is really the only arena where you get that instant star power. And the NFL just doesn't allow. I think they could have that same effect, but with baseball, because you got 9 guys on the field, and then you have the guy in the batter's box, it's so hard for one guy to transcend that, that team environment and to bring themselves into such a forefront where they are a big-time public figure.
I mean, you even look at the negotiations and the collective bargaining agreements and everything else, and that also lends itself to letting you know that there is an emphasis on it being a players' first league right now.
Well, and another arena that probably 95% of our audience or more don't even know because it happened so long ago. But if we look to the film industry,
yes, I was going to talk about that.
Used to, it was the studios that the studios were bigger than the stars.
Yes,
you had MGM and you had Universal, and really it was 2 major ones, and they actually had contracts with the studio. And it wasn't until, I believe, about the 50s that, that model started to burn, and then the stars became bigger, and they actually started, signing their own deals. And now we don't, the only thing we know about Universal and MGM is just, hey, when the movie starts, we see the little symbol before it starts.
One of the things that happened this past fall is you had the Dakota Access Pipeline, and you saw the hashtag #NoDapple, DAPL. And a lot of people in Hollywood did get behind that. Alyssa Milano specifically, I would see her on Twitter all the time. No dapple, water is life. So that's one of the things where to just piggyback off what you said, 3.0, actors and actresses in this day and age, when they get behind a movement, it catches fire. It catches fire, and that's when people really start to hone in on it and pay attention. But again, so let's tie this back to this whole idea of role models and being role models. Whether they mean to or not, they are promoting a very specific lifestyle. Now, our social media team said something on Twitter Sunday. I was watching Billions. I wasn't with them, but I was watching Billions.
You didn't give them a day off this time.
They did not get a day off. Let me be specific. Neither the morning nor the evening team got a day off, so nobody blow up my phone after we leave here tonight. Thank you, 3.0, for making that very clear this week. Because of you last week, I had a lot of questions to answer, but you know what? They understood.
I think you were just talking to me on Sunday because I was just getting back from the doctor.
I was just talking to you because you almost blew up your ankle. But one of the characters on Billions, our social media team described him. He's everything sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but he gets the job done. Specifically, that would be the character Wags or Wagner on Billions. Shout out to all my Billions fans. I know the social media team thoroughly enjoyed Sunday night. I actually had to put my phone on silent because
my God, man, we were getting so many
the back and forth that was going on with our team and everybody on Twitter. We actually got some emails and direct messages from the writers, the producers, and some of the actors of Billions just thanking us for the work that we
You
did for
actually
them.
sent me a text that said my phone can't handle this.
It couldn't. It could. There was too much going on. But to get back to my point, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So when you think Aerosmith, I saw something. Now, obviously, this is not verifiably true, but that Steven Tyler once said that he spent over $5 million on cocaine, but it's throughout the 1970s. So you think sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Now, here's one of the things that bother me. Certain people, like let's say an athlete like an Oubre or an Olynyk, they lose their temper, and then people want to talk about it for a week. He shouldn't have lost his temper. He shouldn't have done that. And then your guys like your Aerosmith, all of your historical rock bands, they got that whole stigma of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They go out and do those things, and that's just the way it is. So we're allowing them to be a specific kind of public figure, and that's one of the things I have issues with.
No, I think that's fair. It was something that you said. We said we'd talk a little bit about how movies have impacted culture. In 1985, 51% of people actually believe that if you had AIDS, you need to be quarantined. Mm-hmm. And 15% believe that you actually need to have tattoos to identify yourself as having AIDS.
So they wanted a modern-day Auschwitz.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
But then came a movie in 1993 by Tom Hanks.
Philadelphia.
He was a gay lawyer in that movie.
Man.
And it really helped change the perception of the AIDS epidemic and about people that had AIDS. Philadelphia, I believe, is one of the great examples of a movie that impacted culture.
That's like all time.
Yeah, Tom Hanks and Denzel in that movie talk about two powerhouses just literally duking it out on screen.
Yeah.
And then there was an HBO. HBO used to do those made-for-family movies back in the early 90s. And there was a story. I don't remember the young man's name, but there was a story about a young man that got HIV through a blood transfusion. And his family didn't tell anybody. Nobody at school knew it. And then, it came out slowly. And that was another thing that really changed the narration and what we all heard about AIDS and how it was approached.
That movie.
Yeah.
So awesome point there, 3.0. Go ahead, Rod.
I've got a couple more. Morgan Spurlock, he ate McDonald's for a whole month, and he made a documentary called Super Size Me.
Remember
that?
Yeah.
He gained 25 pounds. His cholesterol was off the roof, and his doctor said his liver was of an alcoholic. That movie made a big impact.
It did.
If you look at it, and fast food chains kind of started trickling down, and the Chipotle's and other, healthy foods started to rise.
And if you look at where we are now, a lot of fast food places have their nutrition information readily available, and they're trying to move towards fresh and free foods.
So that actually brings up a great question, 3.0. So do you verifiably we see a statistical, say, upswing in movements once you see celebrities get involved? So I mean, that's really what we're kind of transitioning into. Has that been the case?
Hold. One of your fans one of the members of the 3.0 fan club, Mr. Steve Allen, says Mr. 3.0 loses a point on his black card for not mentioning Denzel along with Tom Hanks in Philadelphia.
We said it was Tom Hanks, like Denzel too.
I didn't say it. Take that up with your fan club. Go ahead, Rob. What were you saying?
Man, now if we were playing spades right now,
he just dropped a.
we just cut.
Yeah, he just cut the deck on you. Go ahead, Rod.
But no, the question I did have, because you just delivered a lot of statistics to us, is do you see a correlation between movements having upswings when public figures get involved?
That was a very hard thing to track statistically, but I do have a few examples. And then I actually had a few other movies and one actually song that I thought made a big impact. But let's just look at a few things. Michael J. Fox got Parkinson's.
Yes.
It's on record that he's raised over $200 million, and I think there's no question that he has raised the awareness for Parkinson's, and because people contributed to Parkinson's disease, it has made things easier for people with Parkinson's. I was Lady Gaga. One example that she did, if I don't know if y'all remember, but 100,000 people visited the Service Members Legal Defense Network page over a 72-hour period. 93% new visitors, when she actually let retired gay officers escort her down the carpet at the MTV Video Music Awards. So that is a statistical thing that I can point out to. And then Willie Nelson has raised over $45 million for farm aid for family farmers. So those are just some examples that I was able to track where celebrity influences has raised awareness and statistically have raised money or created a following.
Comment from one of our viewers, Joe Amos, says there was an HBO special in the 90s about a football player taking steroids. That changed my outlook on that option because I was very impressionable at that time and had considered it. So again,
that's a real life example.
No, that is a real life example.
Good stuff,
I
Joe.
will use me as an example. Now, one of the things that my father was very good at is that he told me, if you want to play like Ken Griffey Jr., obviously you have to practice and train like him. But he was like, son, I would never tell you not to play like a Griffey. I would never tell you to not play like a Michael Jordan. But my father never once let me even think about looking at them as role models. He just wouldn't, whether they were good or bad. He was very good at making sure that he was my role model. He was the person I looked to. Whereas I think that's something that a lot of parents miss is we've talked before about parents, and when we did our millennials episode about parents wanting someone else to raise their kids, right? They want devices and TV shows and smartphones and tablets to raise their children. And a lot of what you see when we're looking at this, whether it's athletes or entertainers, is that they want other people to be the guide.
No, exactly. And at the end of the day, I think we're all a hodgepodge of influences, but we have certain anchors that we would consider our anchor influences. And kids, even if they're looking up to superstars, entertainers, musicians, whatever it may be, they're still at the end of the day craving an anchor for their dominant influence. And at the end of the day, you have to have it because like I just said, at the end of the day, these celebrities, these public figures, they're not in the trenches with them when they're going through things in life. So that's the most important thing in terms of having a role model and mentorship. So while, yes, they are a role model to some extent as far as being able to be an example that people can aspire to, they can't be the end all be all for everybody, which is a mistake that, like you just said, so many parents make. You've got to have somebody in the trenches, and it's not going to be that superstar.
Well, a statistic I saw that over 55% of kids that were polled said, they had no identity to their actual neighborhood or community that they were in, and and of course, if it's just the facts that we have in the poorer areas, kids. They don't have very much of avatars of success to actually excite their hopes. So, and this assumes, when people say that parents need to be role models, this assumes that, they have parents that are intact and caring parents. There are a lot of kids out there that, come from single family homes and they don't have a family unit to support them. And with television and social media, that's all kids are. That's all kids are actually on these days. So it's no wonder that the influence of celebrities is so high on kids.
So last week we talked about social media, and we talked about how people are now starting to consume their news, cutting the cord and so forth. So athletes, entertainers, politicians, and so forth, those are the people that have the most followers on your Facebooks, your Twitters, your Instagram. So naturally, what you do is going to be seen.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And you just talked about what we talked about last week with respect to how the pendulum has shifted so much as far as how we perceive and how we consume content nowadays. And when we talk about role models and we talk about athletes or public figures being more than just what they do, it goes into the future of how we perceive television, how we perceive content. Because nowadays, if you look at what happened at ESPN, it was really a reaction to what we look for is we want more than just sports, stats, and what you do. We want backstories. We want all of that.
Now, I'm going to give a shout out here. He's been on our show and he's joined our team, actually. But Mr. Drew Tolbert, I have to read this comment from him. Drew says, it doesn't matter whether you want to be or don't want to be. People will look up to you. Always remember, Hitler was probably someone's role model. I mean, that is
powerful.
Those are powerful words, because I think that's so very accurate. That's so very accurate is, again, when you are a public face, people are going to look up to you whether you want them to or not.
Yeah.
Kids will emulate you. Adults will emulate you. Impressionable people are going to emulate you. Go ahead, 3.0.
Well, I mean, how do you make your money if you're an athlete or any form of entertainer that we talked about tonight?
Well, here's the thing.
You make your money by people consuming your product in some way.
Yes, yes.
So here's the thing: is the way you make your money is the more people know about your brand, you sell your brand, etc. So, I don't think you can have it both ways. If you're going to complain about, I don't want to be a role model, well, it's that public that you're feeding off of in order to make your income and your money. So my point that I'm trying to make is those same people that are consuming your product are going to want to emulate you.
See, I'm going to give you guys a very specific example of something that would not that could not exist today. So Michael Jordan, he has never ever spoke out about anything political, and people have bashed him for that. Nothing political, nothing cultural.
Didn't he make an exception within the last year on one subject?
He donated, what was it, $1 million?
I forgot what
but
it
he
was.
didn't say anything about it. The news got out, but he didn't say anything about it. Yes, he donated some money, but he has never publicly voiced anything. So you look back in the early 90s when he went from, Michael Jordan to Air Jordan to the Jordan Man, the jump man symbol, and to grow into what the Jordan brand is now. Again, we didn't have social media back then.
Nope.
The world was not as connected. So, for example, when he retired after the death of his father, after the Bulls three-peated, a lot of people speculated, does this have to do with the fact that David Stern discovered his gambling habits and we want you to take a couple of years off? This is going to be a de facto suspension because you have a gambling issue. Now, of course, that's just speculation.
Right.
But here's my point. He wouldn't even be able to gamble the way that he did back then now because of all of the eyes that are on people. I'm going to give you guys a today example. This actually happened today. I caught it on Twitter. So the rapper Bow Wow.
Oh, man.
And now he goes by Shad Moss. He's an actor. He posted a pic on Instagram of a private jet, and he said it's a traveling day. It turns out that pic was not one that he took at the airport on the landing strip. It was a stock photo from a traveling agency that also rents vehicles in Florida.
Wow.
Because someone on his flight took a picture of him and posted it to Instagram and was like, why did Bow Wow post that pic saying he's traveling private, man? This dude is in economy class with me.
Wow.
So there's just certain things you can and can't do these days because everyone has eyes on you.
Everybody has eyes, and so the social media aspect has totally changed everything. Well, I also think we talked about the millennials versus Gen X type of podcast.
Yes.
And there's a different perception out of generations. Most millennials today, if you look at your LeBron, if you look at your D Wade, if you look at your Carmelo and Chris Pauls, I mean, we even established that they want more than what the Gen X had or wanted out of their media and public perception. We want to be able to know and see how everything is. We want to, and so I think that the different generation also plays a role in it just as much as social media does.
Right.
And I think we also have to make a little bit of shout out reality television that started in the, it really started in the late 90s, but it really got popular.
The Real World, the real world was the first.
But, I think we have to give a little bit of credit for that as well, because that was the first time, at least in the television genre, that we were looking at something, quote, reality.
Speaking of reality TV, Rob Dyrdek's former bodyguard, and they were actually best friends.
Big Black
passed away today at the age of 45.
Yeah.
So rest in peace to him, and our thoughts and prayers with his family as well as Rob Dyrdek, because they were best friends.
They were. And
Rob and Big on MTV.
Yeah, Rob and Big, and that was a great show for years.
It was. So here's one of the things that I want to look at before we go to our final segment. Who are some people that have damaged their brand either because of their off-field behavior or some things that became public. Now, obviously, I'm going to give you guys a layup, O.J. Simpson, because here's the thing about O.J. He had the Hertz rental car commercials. He felt like now here's the thing. The O.J. Made in America series that ESPN ran that actually won Academy Awards, some of the best film I've ever seen. But O.J. did not view himself as a black man. He actually used the N-word in the presence of white people, and he just did. He did not see himself as a black man. Now, here's the thing about OJ. He felt like he had transcended those lines and that people accepted him for who he was. Now, guilty or not guilty, I mean, you can't publish a book entitled What If I Did Do It? What if I did it? But here's the thing. When all that happened in 1994, irreparably damaged his brand.
Oh, totally.
No question.
Another guy that just completely destroyed his brand would be Lance Armstrong.
Oh, yeah. That's an easy one.
Another one that just constantly was number one in a lot of categories is Michael Jackson. When he said that he shared the bed with children. I mean, yes, he still is going to be the king of pop, but just think about had he not made that statement. He ruined it. He really damaged his reputation.
It's kind of funny. I mean, most people can still consider him the greatest entertainer, but I can honestly say here that there's a good percentage of people that the first thing when you mention Michael Jackson, you think of little kids now.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. We never know what his career had been had he not damaged his reputation that way. And Whitney Houston was another one, in 05 and 06 with the rehab that just constantly came up in the list. By the way, 2 out of 3 of your record label are constantly in the top 3 to 5
so that automatically
of damaged reputation.
That automatically eliminates you from contention of best record label because your people can't stay out of rehab.
Hey, she said crack is whack.
I go, and people can Google what he did because I don't want to say on the air what he did, but Pee Wee Herman really messed himself up.
Oh, wow. That's the first time in like 20 years I heard the name Pee Wee Herman.
So I'm going to give you guys a modern day example. So this is at the top of my mind because of a joke I heard earlier today, but let's think about a Beyonce, for example, right? Mm-hmm. When the Lemonade album came out, it was like women felt empowered everywhere. You had to listen to the lyrics. She had the visual album that went with it that debuted on HBO. What if it would have come out? What if, I'm sorry, don't attack me, Beyonce fans, this is a hypothetical. What if it would have come out that she was actually having an affair herself? Of course, she has said, and Jay-Z has said that no, there was no affair. That was all art. That was all art. Mm-hmm. But what if it would have been discovered that she was having an affair? That not only would have damaged her brand, that would have tanked the sales of that album specifically.
Totally. Yes. I mean, there's no question that would have definitely done that.
And I got to read this from one of our viewers currently. Tiffany says, AI, Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson didn't necessarily diminish his own brand per se, but it was his persona, the braided hairstyle, oversized clothing, big earrings that nearly overshadowed his incredible athletic ability, which that actually led to the NBA instituting a dress code. Mm-hmm. So now these guys think it's cool to have their suits all tailored and so forth.
Right.
But I actually agree with that because AI was not afraid to be himself. And that did actually damage his brand. That's why Nike, let me give you a stat. You love stats. Nike has, I believe, a 93% share of the basketball shoe market. The other 7% is split between Adidas and Reebok. Mm-hmm.
So we're forgetting one.
Under Armour.
Under Armour. I mean, my bad. Adidas and Under Armour. I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction.
You're forgetting another.
You forgot about them triple B's, baby.
Oh, the big baller brand.
Triple B's, baby.
But here's the thing. So when you look at AI, obviously everybody wants to be part of Nike. Nike wouldn't touch him. Now Reebok snatched him up, and I actually had a few pair of Iversons, but I agree with that because that persona made the company shy away.
And it didn't help him when he was talking about practice.
Practice.
The anniversary of that was like
it was Sunday.
It was
Sunday. The anniversary of that was on Sunday, which I hate that ever became a thing because you got such a small snippet of what he actually said, and it always gets missed that one of his childhood friends had died earlier that week. So that press conference was supposed to be about that tragedy and what he was feeling.
And even said after, this sport that I put all my blood, sweat, and tears into, and we talking about the practice.
Right.
So really, what he was really saying was, you're talking about me being late for practice when I'm out here laying it on the line, sacrificing more than anybody else on
Exactly.
the team.
So
So that was the real context, people.
to wrap up this segment, before we get to the really cool stuff this week, to wrap up this segment, I'll just give my conclusion. Athletes, entertainers, whether it's a DiCaprio or a DiMaggio, you like that, don't you?
Yep.
Whether it's a DiCaprio or a DiMaggio, when you are in the public eye, especially in this day and age, in the kind of space that we live in, when I can go on Twitter right now and I can probably tell you what Ocho Cinco is doing, I can probably tell you what Alyssa Milano is doing, I can tell you what Carrie Champion,
oh, boy.
what she's doing.
We know that.
The thing is that you are going to be some form of a role model, positive or negative, whether you want to or not. Now, to the parents out there, raise your children. I know that not all kids have good parents, but again, I was told you want to stand like Griffey in the box, you want to swing like Griffey, you want to shoot like Jordan, fine, but I'm your father, I'm your role model. But for a lot of kids and even impressionable adults, these people that are in the public space, you are role models whether you want to be or not.
I would agree with that. I think there's no question. You are a role model. The question is, are you good or bad? And, obviously this is not going to really make, they would never do this. But here's my question. Here's my point. If you don't want to be a good role model and you want to do behavior that, that is not going to be good for kids, or you don't want to be an upstanding, how society would define you as a upstanding citizen. Here's my question. Stay off social media. I mean, I know you want to promote yourself, but why don't you not post what you do, and if you don't want, do that. Now, I know they wouldn't do that, but my point is either be a good role model or just don't even be on social media, and be a bad influence if you are not interested in having a good persona.
Yeah, and like I said, we've had the question of entertainer versus role model. Honestly, you're a little bit of both. I mean, I think you're a lot of role model because all eyes are on you, and you're a little bit of entertainment because and we'll get more into memorable moments in our next segment, but. Everybody's always looking for that indelible moment that they can always remember what they were doing at the time, what you did. I mean, and that iconic moment, and if you're not conscious of being an entertainer, oftentimes you miss that moment. So I think that they're really a little bit of both.
So going into this last segment here. So follow us on Twitter at Switch Coverage, because what we've decided to do in this last segment, we're going to test it out. And this week, I know it's going to work because we nominated one of our Twitter followers, Miss Sarah G. Shout out to Sarah, and the social media team calls her Saren. And I had to go back and look through the tweets to figure out why. And the reason is that she had momentarily changed her Twitter name to Aaron. So I guess she's got secret identity, superhero powers. But what she did for us is we nominated her this week because she is one of our followers. To be nominated, you have to follow us at Switch Coverage. And what she did is she sent to the social media team, which Rod and I were able to get our eyes on, about 10, 15, about 10, it was about 10, 10 different things that she wanted us to discuss in this last segment, because we always like the last segment to be something lighthearted and so forth. You gave us our Caucasian test. We've given you enough grief about your black card, so we wanted to change it up a little bit. So she sent us so much awesome material that it was hard for us on air guys to figure out literally what do we want to use. So we had to pare it down to 3 specific questions that we wanted to talk about here on the air. So again, Miss Sarah, if you're out there watching us live, thank you. I know that you listen. If you don't watch us live on iTunes, check us out on iTunes or SoundCloud. Again, follow us on Twitter at Switch Coverage. Miss Sarah, thank you very, very much for this. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So 3.0, go ahead and jump right into that first question she's got for us.
All right. Well, the first question is a specific memorable moment from a sporting event. Rod, I'll let you start.
Well, I have 2. One's an honorable mention, and then one is the one for me. The honorable mention one for me would be the Miami, Florida State 1991 wide right one, because for me, I was like 9 years old then. That was the first time I had ever been invested in like a number 1 versus 2, because in college football world, when we didn't have BCS and playoffs, number 1 versus 2 like rarely happened. And it happened in the regular season with at that point, the most intense rivalry around. And I was a big Miami fan at that time. And so just to see that field goal go wide right and just remember what I was doing and as I proceeded to run through and everything. That was just a cool sports moment that is like captured in history, and it's cool to do that. But for me, the most iconic moment, and I mean, I know it's cliche, and a lot of people would agree with this, but Michael Jordan hitting the shot at the end of Game 6 against Utah
held the pose,
and it's because we viewed him as a superhero going in. And it's like nobody gets I mean, that's just for movies to be able to walk away in the sunset holding a pose as the greatest player in the world that just sank a shot to win, like, essentially 6 straight titles. I don't count those other 2 years, right?
Right.
But it's like that really happened. And to me, that moment right there, it was just you could have just froze time.
Here's the thing about Michael Jordan, guys, is what he accomplished on the court to me is immortal. Immortal in the sense that I just don't think anybody's ever going to top it. So I definitely can understand that. Now, one thing I wanted to say again, follow us on Twitter at Switch Coverage. For me, this was very personal, and this ties a lot back to the story of our friendship. In January of 2016, my grandfather passed away. He had been ill, but his slip into a coma and passing away was very quick, and unexpected because he had gotten so much better. And me and my father both big Alabama fans. My favorite picture of my father and I is one that I posted recently to my Facebook, where I was able to take him to an Alabama game. It wasn't his first Alabama game, but the first time we went to a game that I paid for everything. I paid for the food, the tickets. So when it comes to anything and everything Alabama football, my father and I share a lot of memories. Well, a few weeks after my grandfather had passed away, I mean, I literally remember almost feeling like I didn't want to watch the Alabama-Clemson game, but of course I was going to watch it. And that game was that game, for me, I don't remember that game being a back and forth. I remember Alabama, it felt like Alabama was losing the whole game to me, and then there were certain turning points that happened. But specifically when Kenyon Drake took it 95 yards to the house, ran the kick back, the onside kick, such a gutsy call by Nick Saban. But I remember at halftime, I tried to go to bed.
Yes,
I texted you guys and I said, I'm going to bed. I can't do this. And your exact words 3.0 were, no, will you stand with us? And I had turned on the shower, and I was draped in my towel, and I read your text, and that made me, okay, I'm going to watch the game. Win or lose, I'm going to finish. We're going to finish. The whole Nick Saban thing, we're going to finish. I'm going to watch the game. We weren't together, but watch it with the guys. We always text, even if we're not together during the game. And when Alabama won that game, I called my father and broke down in tears because it was the first time in weeks I felt like myself and a lot of my family members could smile. Because, my grandfather was such a solid piece of the family. So it wasn't just about the fact that Alabama won a national championship. To me, we had all spread back across the country after the funeral and so forth. For me, that was a moment that drew us all back together, knowing that we were all watching as a family. Yes, that's fairly recent. It might seem cheap, but that's something that's very special to me for reasons outside the lines.
And that was the most satisfying national championship for a team that I love to win because, like you just said, I know you had went through a lot, and we were going back. It literally felt like we were part of that national championship.
It did.
I mean, to this day, that to me was the most satisfying moment for a favorite team of mine
compared to this year.
Championship. Just I'm trying to forget that. Like that's like the second.
If you want a juxtaposition. Exact opposite this year. Exact opposite this year.
I had that happen 2 times. I had that happen with my college football and my college basketball team.
And one thing I wanted to say, as we get into the third segment, we have a lot of comments here about these different moments. That's what we want for you guys is, yes, there's going to be somebody nominated and we're going to use their questions or whatever they come up with, something cool for the third segment, but a lot of participation. I want to read a couple of things. Brant Harrison says, Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson after getting saved by the bell in the previous round. Now, the thing was, Buster Douglas was down for like 11 seconds.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be able to look at the timekeeper and everything else during that time, And
so that was a huge moment.
Yeah.
And then Steve Allen says Aaron Rodgers and his Hail Mary. So which one?
Yeah, exactly.
Which one? Him and Olivia Munn broke up, by the way. So go ahead, 3.0.
Wow. I almost lost my train of thought with that comment. Well, I actually, when I prepared this, I actually thought about, when I read this question, I thought about, events that I actually attended. But as far as TV, cliche, as you say, but when Michael Jordan did hit the shot, I knew, that was, that was, okay, I've got a Babe Ruth in my lifetime. That was Babe Ruth, calling the shot, if you will, for in the previous, back in the 30s. And so knowing that I was watching that was special. So I knew that was a big deal. Now, as far as in person, and obviously when you have your own favorite sports teams, they become personal. Going to the Rose Bowl back in 2009 and seeing where I went to school, Alabama, beat Texas was big. And I took a friend of mine that had overcome cancer and just lost his father. And we just had a fantastic time there. But outside of my favorite team, I would actually say that I actually went to an NBA Finals game, I believe it was Game 6, Pacers versus Lakers. It went into overtime. And that
was the Game 5.
That was Game 5 because they won it in 6.
That's right. And Reggie Miller missed a 3 at the end to try to win the game. And I believe Kobe Bryant just took over in that game.
Because Shaq fouled out.
Shaq fouled out. And I was at that game. And I've done a lot of cool things. I've been to the Final Four. I've been to the Masters, etc. But I would say outside my favorite team, that was probably my most favorite sports moment.
Cool. So her next question. Now, this one I was like, man, we're going to get some really interesting answers here. But again, she had so many great questions for us that it was hard to choose. But these are the 3 that we chose. The second one was living or dead. Pick one person you'd like to meet and why. So 3.0, we'll start with you.
Well, this may be a cliche answer, kind of like the Michael Jordan, but as much as I tried to think about it, and as much as I tried to come up with something different other than this answer, for me personally, if I could go to anyone living or dead, it would be Jesus Christ.
I knew somebody was going to. We should have specified in pre-production you can't say Jesus because I knew somebody
that's so obvious for us.
Everybody was going to say Jesus. Yes.
I tried hard to do that now.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. But that would
lay some hands on you.
That would be, and then, but if I had to come up with something different than that, I probably would want to probably meet George Washington.
Okay. Why?
Founder of our country, did so much. I think, we have such a, perspective. We have so many different angles of what we think the founding fathers meant and what they believe, et cetera. And I think it'd be really neat to sit down with George Washington and really get into his mind and have a conversation and get a first-hand account, because we have so many different perspectives and people, on different sides that try to say, well, this is what they meant or this is what their intentions were. And it'd be really good to go to one of the best sources in person, and that would be George Washington.
Excellent.
Okay.
Rod, who you got?
Okay. This choice that I have is actually going to tie in this entire episode that we did. Obviously, I am a father of a girl who is a phenomenal athlete.
Yes. Yes.
And
to say the least.
And my choice for who I would meet is actually Serena Williams, and let me tell you why. I watched a year ago an interview that she did when she was 8 years old, and they asked her in that interview, they said, who do you look up to now as a tennis player? And she looked bright-eyed, snaggletooth, and she said, I want everybody to be like me. And so, think about how powerful that is at 8 years old. And we know what Serena has done now. But that interview, she said, I want everybody to be like me. In other words, she knew in her heart at that particular point that she had greatness in her, and she wanted to be the standard, and she marched to the beat of her own drum even at that point. And I bring that back because it was crazy that a few months ago, Gabby loves basketball and everything. I was like, so-and-so, I think we were talking about like Maya Moore or something like that. She's like, she's the best player around right now. She's the best. And she goes, no, I'm the best. And so I would want to meet her and just because say what you want about Richard Williams, the dude did a phenomenal job of programming his kids.
I like that
Venus
word,
and Serena,
programming,
for success. And just to hear and just to see the parallels when you have kids that have a champion's mentality
right,
like that, and I just when I saw that interview, and then when she said that a few months later, I was like, wow. I mean, that just, you talk about role models, and you want true role models want to be the standard.
So for me, anytime I get a question like this, I try not to make it about me, because she didn't specify this. She didn't say, am I the only person that gets to speak with this individual, dead or alive, or can I bring my dad? Can I bring my best friend? So when I get questions like this, I'm like, all right, who is somebody that's very meaningful to me and I would like to meet, but they would like to meet them as well, so we could do it collectively. Now, you guys have heard the story of my mother and father and myself meeting Muhammad Ali. For the purposes of time, I'll just let you guys know that Muhammad Ali ran up to my dad before Parkinson's ever hit home, and he was afflicted by Parkinson's, and he yelled out, "Hey, pretty boy!" And my dad, like, he gets embarrassed when I tell that story, but that did happen. So he met Muhammad Ali. Now, I was like 6 years old at the time, so I didn't get what was going on. So I was like, I can't say Muhammad Ali because my dad met him.
Mm-hmm.
But someone that my dad I know looked up to was Bruce Lee. Because now, let's kind of tie this back to what we were talking about throughout the show. When it comes to Bruce Lee, and one of the things that gets lost in the narrative of the United States is how Asian Americans are treated. We talk a lot about black and white, but Asian Americans, they were in internment camps for a period of time. And,
that's right.
And Bruce Lee did suffer a lot of racial discrimination. And even the studios in Hong Kong or so forth, where he should have been a very marketable star and was, they didn't want to bank him because they were like, no, you want to be an American. And he actually had to get his start in Hong Kong. The film Fist of Fury was originally titled The Big Boss and premiered in Hong Kong before it ever became a popular film in the United States. A little bit of history for you. But here's the thing: he was a philosopher. He was a poet. I mean, look at any of my social media any day of the week, and within 7 days, there's probably a quote by Bruce Lee that I posted. You guys can vouch for that.
Yes.
I put up a picture of something he said yesterday. And from the time before I could walk, and of course, by the time I could walk, my dad wanted me to be interested in martial arts and was teaching me martial arts and had me reading all about Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do, but not for the purposes of martial arts. I would want to sit and learn, his philosophies on life, the things that he went through, the discrimination that he faced. And really, I would want to just sit there and listen, because you guys know how much I look up to my father. I always refer to my dad as a superhero. I would really just want to sit there, not even with pen and paper, but just absorb their conversation, to hear the man that I look up to more than anyone and someone that I know he looked up to just to hear them have a conversation. So for me, it would be Bruce Lee. So, Ryan, go ahead with our third and final question for Miss Sarah G. Again, shout out to you. Thanks for following us on Twitter. Last question, then we're going to wrap it up and get out of here.
And the last question was an old Sega or Nintendo game that we love. I got to go Super Nintendo. And to this day, I think it's the most addictive game ever. Super Nintendo Mario Kart. That's the one for me. That game was the most addictive game ever. And I was always the Toad or Koopa Troopa.
That I made a joke last year. There's a part of the city where we live. I said driving on 280 is in the rain is like a Super Mario Kart Alabama edition.
Bunch of banana peels.
Bunch of banana peels and red turtle shells getting thrown everywhere. That's a good one, Rod. That's an excellent one. Mario Kart is to this day people still play Mario Kart.
Yeah. I mean, I love Nintendo 64, and that was pretty addictive too. But just the classic feel for me was the one on Super Nintendo.
Go ahead, 3.0.
Well, I couldn't put it in just one, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit. But
cheater.
Besides the original Mario, because that was the first one I played, RBI baseball. Because my father, actually would play with me in that, so we have a lot of memories playing RBI baseball. And then, of course, what really got me into to really the NFL was Techno Bowl Super Bowl. Of course, another topic at another time could be the impact that video games actually have on people becoming sports fans, for example. But those two games really got me into sports because I'd play those games and then, I'd become a sports fan. And then, Sonic the Hedgehog when it came to Sega. But probably my all-time favorite, if I had to really boil down in how many hours, and it was great by yourself, but it was really good when you had two people, was NBA Jam.
Yes.
Oh, man.
He's on fire.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Drew Tober just said in the comments section NBA Jam
he
minutes
did.
ago.
Yeah.
Mine, it was hard for me to choose because I was a big sports gamer and action gamer. Street Fighter 2 specifically was a big one for me, and that's the
Contra?
one.
Did you ever
Oh
play
yeah,
Contra.
I loved all the Contras.
Yeah.
Yes, big Contra fan. So yeah, excellent 3.0. There were a lot of games that just came to mind, and I was like, man, this is so hard for me to choose. But so NBA Jam, that one did come to mind for me.
Yeah.
Killer Instinct,
Oh, yes.
that one came to mind for me.
Killer Combo.
Mortal Kombat came
Yes.
to mind for me. Of course, Madden. But the one that I would say brings back some of my sharpest memories. Again, I always try to be a little bit different. Maybe I'm odd. But my friends and I, we use sports games to really connect to the truth of the sport itself. Because even back in the early 90s when you had your NBA Live or Bulls versus Blazers was like one of the first games.
Yeah.
You had your NHL 93, 94, 95 and so
Yeah.
forth. Your Maddens. We would use those games, and that's how before social media and before you could go and read about all these guys and you knew who they were from the time they were 15 until they got recruited to college and then NFL. That's how you found out, okay, what teams are good, what players are good, who's fast, who's accurate, who's a hard hitter in football. And a sport that I had no interest in, that my dad actually bought this game for the Sega Genesis, was NHL 94.
Oh, that was a really fun game
Yeah.
to play, man.
And so I started playing. I was like, why did you buy this for me? And my dad, being as perceptive as he is, he was like, do you know anything about hockey? And I was like, no. And he was like, all right, I want you to play that game. And he gave me two books about Wayne Gretzky and Gordie Howe.
Wow.
And so he didn't just give me a game. He gave me a game and 2 books and said, I want you to play that game and read these books and then come back to me in about a month. And then a month later, I had all the kids in the neighborhood playing NHL. And that was, to me, that was the very beginning of I got next. Like, you lose and then you got to give up the sticks. You got to give up the
Right,
sticks.
yeah. Yep.
And so NHL 94 to me is very personal because that's when I learned not just about hockey, but that to me was the beginning of a lot of what you see in social media now and a lot of what you see in video gaming, the realism in video gaming. So for me, it was NHL 94. So we had a few games that were shouted out: Contra, Tetris, NBA Jam, Killer Instinct, Pac-Man. Some people have said Pac-Man. Blades of Steel was on the original Nintendo.
That was good. I'm surprised nobody said Street Fighter.
I was going to say Street Fighter.
And I'm really surprised nobody said Tyson's Punch-Out.
Oh, yeah. Now, that was the original boxing
yeah,
game.
that was
good. Yeah.
What was the name of Holyfield's boxing game? It was like The Real Deal or something.
I can't
remember, but Holyfield's boxing game on Sega Genesis was another one.
I think NBA Live 95, I know you mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
That was all time. And then how many people went out there, and I think that was the first year, might be wrong, first year you could create a player. How many people created Michael Jordan?
Right, because if you typed in certain names,
Yeah.
it brought up their attributes. Yes,
Yeah.
Michael Jordan was on my team. My starting 5 was like Jordan, Pistol Pete, Magic, Bird, and Kareem. So yeah, that was my starting 5. I was that kid.
Yeah.
I was that kid. All right, so thanks guys. We've really enjoyed it. And again, thank you to Miss Sarah G. Shout out to you. What you got, Rod?
Also a shout out to Mike H in Australia, who will be catching this DVR version of that. He is a huge Warrior fan, so I guess shout out to Dub Nation, but most importantly, shout out to Mike H in the Australian connection.
And yeah, and definitely a shout out to him. He was somebody that joined in with our social media team on Sunday, tweeting about billions, wasn't it? Or was that
no?
beforehand?
Actually, he was tweeting
During the Warriors game.
During the Warriors game on Saturday.
So shout out to Mike H. He definitely said he was going to shout us out in Australia. Thank you to everybody in Australia, Ireland, Mexico, Germany. I lost track. You guys saw the map I showed
Yes.
you last week. Go ahead, 3.0.
No, I just appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate all of our team, Drew Tolbert, for helping us out with Justice Media. I appreciate we're growing every single week. We're looking at the metrics, and it's just fascinating. So we continue to try to bring great content to you guys every single week. And, Eric, I hope when we have our podcast next week, I hope you're in a good mood, because this time next week, the NBA draft lottery will take place. And the Lakers, if they're going to get the number 1 pick, I I know that I just want you to be in good spirits for the show.
Hey,
I'll
cause
try
don't
to
worry
be.
about it. They gonna be throwing up them triple B's, baby.
I don't. No.
They gonna be throwing up them triple
no.
B's.
Then they can
No.
be balling.
No, I don't want him anywhere.
No, not balling.
No.
Big balling.
No. no. We getting out of here. I'm not letting y'all torch my
man.
Lakers. Everybody have a great night. Thank you. Follow us on Twitter at Switch Coverage. I already know who we're going to nominate. We'll talk about it for the third segment for next week. You guys have a great week, and we will see you next Tuesday night.